Good morning. We're about to get started. Hope you can hear me well enough. I was trying to figure out how to do the countdown. Couldn't quite make it work. So I see Megan is here and Melissa and looks like Alice and John. Good morning. Thank you. Just want to check, make sure you can hear me. Mark, good to see you. You can feel free, by the way, to, I'm just going to, the announcement's fairly short, just describing what we're going to be, what it looks like may be ahead for us, but please feel free to type in questions in the chat and just throughout, so don't worry about waiting to do that, and then I can scroll back through the chat. I think won't be a problem. Good morning, Vicky, and I see Vicky, you're here. Thanks. So we got some word out. For Vicky Bush, I'm sorry that I didn't get a link to this to you yesterday, last night. That's just my bad. So, and the link for this Sunday's worship is coming soon. Patty, good morning. Welcome. Gonna use that "It Is Well With My Soul" rendition that you blessed us with a couple of weeks ago on Facebook this Sunday. So I'm looking forward to that, Patty. And Brenda, good morning. Good to see you as well. Well, it's pretty much about 10 o'clock. So we will have, I'll continue to, have this video online, and then we're going to put out the written version along with the bulletin today. Alice, I don't know if we've talked about that yet, but just to let you know. Rosalie, good to see you as well. Well, good morning. I have a little bit of some prepared comments, and then we'll have time for some questions afterwards, just to kind of get you up to speed on where our deliberations and church leadership are, and starting with me personally. So I don't know if you've read recently, but a lot of the talk as we're thinking and planning and enacting sort of a phased relaxation, I'm going to call it, of quarantine restrictions throughout Delaware and the United States and the world, actually. One of the phrases that keeps coming up is that shutting down was relatively easy and quick, and phasing in safely will be much more difficult and require careful deliberations and to figure out how we're gonna do that safely in order to keep everyone safe. I read in a March 17 op-ed piece in the New York Times, Frank Bruni wrote, "Normalcy is the enemy in this pandemic. We have to behave abnormally to reach the far side of it." And the day before, his colleague Michelle Goldberg had written, "Togetherness, once a balm, has become a threat. This mass withdrawal is like social chemotherapy, damaging the fabric of our communal life while trying to save it." That may be particularly true in a church in a church community where we thrive on togetherness. When I was queuing up and finding Patty's video for this Sunday's offertory, I managed to scroll through a few of the worship videos that she has still on Facebook when we were allowed to be together, and I wept because I missed it so much, and I know you share that with me. It's interesting how those sentiments about the quarantine, this mass withdrawal being like social chemotherapy, and that we have to behave abnormally to reach the far side safely and together, were very prophetic. How little did they know at the outset? Those were written on March 16th and 17th. Do you remember back then? That's a Monday and Tuesday after the first Sunday we experimented together with live stream worship. How accurate they were. So in order to safely and adequately prepare for in-person worship, our leadership team has directed the formation of a task force to present a policy for St. Paul's Church at our June 15th leadership meeting, which means we'll be continuing live stream worship and meetings by Zoom until at least then, and then hopefully putting into place some relaxation that will keep everyone safe, perhaps by the third Sunday in June. The team also approved an expenditure of up to $4,000 to purchase equipment that will enable us to continue offering live stream worship through our upcoming pastoral transition as of July 5th. I don't believe we're going to have to spend that much money. I think it'll probably be around half that, but they wanted to make sure that we had enough money allocated to make sure that we could order all the equipment and get it on time. There's several assumptions that I am and we are making in proceeding with that kind of abundance of caution. So the first is COVID-19 is still a grave threat to public health. There's still no effective cure, treatment, or vaccine, and no widespread availability of testing, contact tracing, or even protective equipment. So while quarantine has reduced the rate of infections in many areas, we are relaxing those restrictions, knowing that doing so will result in an increased rate of infections and death rates. The second assumption that we're making is that church gatherings in enclosed spaces for lengthy periods of time, an hour or more, are among the most optimum environments for sharing the virus, particularly through singing, ironically enough, which greatly increases the chance of infection through what they call asymptomatic spread and aerosolization of the virus. Had to practice that word a bit. In other words, not knowing that you have it, not having any kind of symptoms, coughing, high fever, anything like that, you could be carrying it, and then singing actually is probably a little worse than coughing together. So that's one of the assumptions that we're proceeding with. And third, our congregation, like most congregations in this country, is composed of persons who, by virtue of their age and pre-existing health conditions, are at a higher risk of complications and death from being infected by the virus. So our number one rule and goal is the safety and health, and that includes physical, mental, and spiritual, of all of our members, friends, and staff. So I'm going to invite us all to, as we proceed through this relaxation of restrictions during the quarantine, is to assume that each one of us is carrying the virus and then take steps to protect others around us. So we'll use Governor Carney's guidelines as a minimum standard. And just as a reminder, put that on, that's available through Facebook and on our website. But those minimum standards include, in this initial phase, a prohibition from participating in in-person worship if you are at high risk of contracting COVID-19. So that means 65 years or older, or have underlying health conditions identified by the CDC as higher risk. If you have a cough, high fever, shortness of breath, or have been exposed to anyone who's tested positive with COVID-19 in the past 14 days. The second minimum requirement is that individuals who are age 13 and older are required to wear a cloth face mask covering to enter and remain inside. They do recommend cloth masks for children ages 2 through 12, but those aren't required. And then social distancing, 6 feet or more, is required to remain inside. No handshaking, hugging, or kissing allowed. Families and members of the same household may remain and sit together in a pew. And the governor's also requesting that our services are no longer than an hour, that each church is permitted to conduct a service that will be restricted in size to no more than 30% of the stated occupancy requirements, so long as we can maintain social distancing within that constraint. They also recommend that service and gathering times must be staggered to permit cleaning the public spaces before the next service gathering begins, according to CDC guidelines. So one of the things I wanted to highlight was that during all phases of pre-vaccine in-person gatherings at St. Paul's UMC, we'll be encouraging staff, members, and friends who are over 65 and people of any age who have serious underlying medical conditions to remain at home for their safety. Of course, during the initial phase, our governor has mandated and prohibited such persons from participating in in-person worship. And according to the CDC, just as a reminder, the medical conditions that count as serious underlying medical conditions include people with chronic lung disease or moderate to severe asthma, people who have serious heart conditions, people who are immunocompromised, either due to cancer treatment, smoking, bone marrow, organ transplantation, immune deficiencies, poorly controlled HIV or AIDS, or prolonged use of corticosteroids and other immune weakening medications. Also, people with severe obesity, body mass index of 40 or higher, people with diabetes, chronic kidney disease, undergoing dialysis, and people with liver disease. So one of the things I just wanted to clear up is that these in-person gatherings, when we'll be able to start them back up, will look nothing like the worship we remember from before the quarantine, and will, for safety's sake, exclude most of our members and friends. So therefore, we will continue live streaming worship, Bible studies, prayer gatherings, and all meetings without interruption until further notice. And I can't imagine why we would be stopping that anytime soon. That'll be the main way for all of our members that we continue worshiping and experiencing virtual community together. I'm not wanting to get ahead of our task force, which is going to include people who are healthcare professionals, members of our board of trustees, because we have building considerations, facilities to consider, and other members of the church. We've invited several people already who've accepted, and if any of you would like to be involved, please contact me or directly or through the church office. Our first meeting is this evening at 8 p.m. I didn't want to interfere with the PFLAG meeting at 7, and we'll be meeting on Zoom. So that's what I have for you today. Just wanted to keep you up to date on the latest. I do recognize that's an abundance of caution, but I think that's the best and safest way and most faithful way to proceed. So I'm seeing folks still through the chat, just saying hello. But if you have any specific questions, we could stay on the line for a few more minutes, and I'll try my best to answer them. So I'll be monitoring the chat here for a few minutes and let you digest some of that. And I'll check and see if we've got any questions. I think I may be about 30 seconds ahead of you. So may need to wait about half a minute before you realize I am asking you to offer any questions. Patty writes, "Thank you," and that's the way to go. Melissa Brooks asks, how will you know when capacity has been reached? Again, I don't want to get too far ahead of our team that we're putting together to put a policy together for us, but we will, I think at a minimum, have sort of monitoring and screening at the door. And at that point of entry, we'll be taking a tally and account of people who are coming in the building, and that's how we'll keep track of who's coming and how many people are present, rather than having people come in the building and take attendance as we've been doing in the past. That obviously raises a question of what happens when we get to the top number, and have to turn people away. That's one of the things we'll be talking about thinking about what happens in that eventuality. Vicky Spence writes, better to be overly safe. Thank you, and thanks for keeping us connected. Thank you, Vicky, and thanks for all the work you're doing. Melissa asked again, what will you do if full? We're really, I got to tell you, struggling with that. And I know some people have been a little frustrated that, we're going to take this extra time, but, I'm imagining a couple of different scenarios, one of which is someone, comes to the door and we've reached capacity. And so how do we say, in a faithful and pastoral way, maybe if you'll wait, then, we have, maybe multiple worship services or something like that. Of course, if we're outside, we will not be up against those restrictions probably as much as if we're inside. So we're also thinking about different ways to offer worship. The other scenario that I'm imagining is if we're, say, taking people's temperature remotely at the door, and then what do we do, pastorally with someone who is, running a high fever. John's asking, how is transitioning going with the new pastor? Pastor Kevin Benjamin and I are spending several hours a week talking together about not only this policy, but of course the intricacies and new kinds of processes that attend live stream worship preparation and offering that on Sunday. It's a sort of new world. We're learning a great deal as we go. So we're working very closely together, and our leadership team is working closely together as well. Thanks for asking. Brenda, you're asking, will something be sent via mail to the congregation? There are quite a few who do not interact with Facebook and other online resources. Good question. Thank you. Our policy from the beginning, and this is even before coronavirus, is when we send mass emails out to the congregation, because that's a very effective, timely form of communication, we always include a direct mailing at the same time to persons who are not online. So we're keeping up with those people, and we'll do the same with this. We're going to be sending out this summary that I've just outlined together with our bulletin today by mail. And Mark, let's see, I can't find the info, but recall the age recommendation being 60 to 65. That's a good observation, Mark. Everything I'm seeing from the governor's office and also from CDC uses 65 as the lower threshold age. I think, again, out of abundance of caution, 60 might be a more prudent age, but I'm again going with right now, for the sake of this announcement, what I'm seeing from the governor's office and CDC recommendations. Of course, if that changes, we'll adjust. Let's see. Melissa, wonderful question. Haven't officially joined St. Paul's, but want to. Well, praise God, first of all, and thank you. I'm so glad that you feel welcome enough to feel a part of this community. So you already are, and I thank you so much for participating today and in worship. So let's talk. I'll be getting together with you soon, and we'll figure something out. The Wisconsin info, that's right. They did say 60. And some of my initial communication, I think, certainly to our leaders, said 60. Estimated start date. I'm thinking, Rosalie, we'll probably do something or offer something different after the 15th of June is what I'm thinking. My personal thoughts are that that this kind of worship, I like to say, masked, separated, and silenced, that we're sort of outlining for indoor worship, or even in some regards outdoor worship, is going to be so vastly different that I think it might be best to plan a worship experience from the ground up that doesn't try to imitate what we were doing on March the 8th. So for an example, I could see, for instance, gathering a group together, socially distanced and with masks, in a circle, let's say outside, probably would be preferable, with an altar of some kind in the middle, that looks like a prayer experience. We'd have maybe music over speakers or something like that, and we'd use movement. So we'd be exploring, just like we have been on live stream media, different ways to take advantage of, not just struggle underneath the restrictions, but to take advantage of perhaps a new opportunity. That would be my hope, but we'll talk more about that, on this task force. Let's see, everything's okay. The CDC and the White House, those are kind of interesting fights that are going on. I think it's very helpful in Delaware that Governor Carney is being proactive and articulating very well the kinds of minimum standards that we're looking at. But again, I want to emphasize that the governor's standards are going to be minimum standards for us. You may know, opened up the beaches, this weekend. And I, though I'd love to go, I'm probably going to be, I am going to be staying away, principally because, my mother-in-law is probably among the highest risk population there is who lives with us. And I would never want to bring the virus inadvertently back into our house. So let's see. I think those are most of the questions that I'm seeing. We're kind of slowing down. So Mark writes, thanks, Alice, and my heavens, I couldn't ask for a better partner in ministry. All the time I've been here at Skyline, in Alice Mullins, and then particularly as this quarantine has unfolded, we've of course been working remotely from each other, but I've really been relying on her heavily, as I know we all have, to keep the fort operating. So thank you all. We'll go ahead and wrap up today, and this recording is going to be available on Facebook and also on our YouTube site and on the website at the church. So God bless you all, and continue to pray and continue to keep connecting with one another. I'm just, my heart is so blessed in the ways in which we are creatively addressing the issues of our need for connection. The vehicle parades, the collection of food, leaving it outside, the calls, the emails, the things that we're experimenting with, storytelling and songs and sharing online, and also letters. I got a wonderful, wonderful letter, pair of letters today from members of our congregation. So we're going old school, as well as seizing some of these new technologies as well. So thank you all, and God bless you, and let's continue to recognize the power and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit every day, no matter what comes our way. Amen.